This is a war between radical Islamists and Western democracy, between the values of extreme religion, death cult, and between the values of freedom, of democracy, of women's rights, of freedom of religion. And that conflict is being brought to Europe, North America, Latin America, Africa, Asia, Australia, everywhere you want. If you look now on the extremism towards Israel, you need to look for a left-wing government, and the more extreme it is, the more anti-Israel it is as well.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Western Spirit here from Israel. I'm Ariel Whitman, and today with us we have someone very special, my dear friend, Deputy Foreign Minister of the State of Israel, Sharren Haskel. Sharren,
Hi.
It's amazing to have you here.
It's a great pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Of course, so we're doing it in English. I think we did it a few times in Hebrew in the past. So Sharren, now you are the Deputy Foreign Minister of the country, and let me ask you the basic question of, where's Israel today? We're about 2.5 years after October 7th. Obviously, we were in like the worst, horrible situation when it happened, but we've won wars. Gaza seems to be quiet now. What do you think? Where are we strategically?
Wow. So I think you can't just look on Israel and say that, but you need to look on the global picture. And what we've seen in the last 2 years, and what we are going to see in the next 5 years, or 3 years at least, is a major shift and changes in world orders. Okay? Different alliances, different groups. There's two different groups, and there's the ones who sits on the fence that are going to have to make choices on where they're standing. And the 7th of October, and ever since the war that we've been fighting on our survival on 6 different fronts. So we've been fighting Hamas, we've been fighting Hezbollah, we've been fighting them through Syria and from Iraq and directly
Yemen.
from Iran and Yemen. And it's been extremely difficult. But it painted a very vivid picture in many countries on the internal shifts and internal politics that are shifting and changing among their own countries.
You mean in the West?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You've seen how left-wing governments are taking a position that align themselves with Islamists.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's interesting because they've been doing that for a very long time. You can see, the Islamists joining forces with the radical left, so with the communists, with the extreme socialists. If you look in New York on the signs who are being carried, you see in the bottom, what is it, like the Socialist Front, the Communist
National
and
Social
Socialist
of America.
Yeah.
The DSA, the Democratic Socialists.
Yeah, so you understand that what they've done in the Middle East by carrying the Islamist agenda together with the radical left is something they've copied and brought to, Western democracies. And it accelerated processes that were already happening in those countries. Take, for example, Bob Vylan. Okay, this is a duo of rappers
From the UK.
From the UK who went on stage and called death chants.
Yeah.
Okay, for the destruction of Israel, death to the IDF.
By the way, he also called for death of the UK itself.
Exactly.
So he was saying like,
Exactly.
you don't get to take your country back. You don't get to control. Basically, so it has to go with the other, right?
So you know about it.
Yeah.
But many people in the UK don't understand that Bob Vylan 2 years ago have said very clearly, kill the police, kill your local MP. So it's not about Israel, but about the process that are happening in the UK about how they are being taught to hate their culture, to hate their faith, to hate their history, to hate their tradition. I mean, England that brought so much into the world. I'm not saying these are complete saints. Throughout history, we can see bad things and good things. But overall, the process, England brought incredible things to the world.
Yes.
And the fact that they can march in the streets and they burn the British flag in their demonstration. I mean, They're burning the Israeli flag as well.
That goes without saying.
But they are burning the British flag, the American flag, the Australian flag. And somehow that is being accepted by those governments who were leading as, it's just waving it off or brushing it off or anything like that. This is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Because this is a destruction of their own culture and their own society. And they have to be very careful, because what they've seen in Israel in the last 2 years is not about a local conflict. We are not fighting a territorial war. This is very different to what you've seen in Syria, what you've seen in between Russia and Ukraine. This is a war between radical Islamists and Western democracy, between the values of extreme religion, death cult, and between the values of freedom, of democracy, of women's rights, of freedom of religion. And that conflict is being brought to Europe, North America, Latin America, Africa, Asia, Australia, everywhere you want. And so where are we now?
Yeah.
2 years after, I'm worried. I'm really worried.
More than you were before?
Yes.
But on the day of, maybe?
Because I thought that would be an awakening point. And there is an awakening point, but it's very slow. And unfortunately, I see more weak leaders who are afraid to take a stand to defend their next generation, just so that they can gain a very close and narrow political gain that's going to gain them just the next elections.
Yes.
And they're buying into very extreme radical immigrants who came from very, from Muslim countries like Pakistan and Syria and Afghanistan, where they're being taught in school to demonize Jews and to demonize the West and to hate the Jews and Israel. And they rather cave in to they're selling their moral standards,
if they have any. That I said. So you jumped ahead, so I'll just go there. So the UK, which you mentioned, they had a terrorist attack on Yom Kippur, the holiest day for the Jewish people, in Manchester. A person named Jihad. So his name was it was obvious what the motives were. His name was the motive. And it seems that, especially with this current government in the UK, they really are worried about losing the radical Muslim vote. And that's why they're so how does you're the deputy foreign minister, what do you say when you talk to people in the UK, government officials? What is
I say it as it is. I don't have any filters, and I've said it on the media and in opinion pieces that I wrote in the UK and in different interviews. They're literally committing suicide. I mean, the problem of anti-Semitism in the UK shows a much deeper problem, a much bigger disease. And they're losing their country. They're losing their identity. They're being taught, the younger generation, to hate their values, to hate their traditions, to hate their history, to hate their flag, so that it can be replaced with other values and other flags and other traditions. And it's committing suicide. And I think Trump, seeing that very clearly, he actually offered asylum now to Jews from the UK because they are unsafe. Look, on the most personal level, my cousin, I won't say who she is, but my cousin's daughter, she studied in London in a public school. And her daughter was stabbed with a needle in the back of her neck because she's Jewish. Yeah, because she's Jewish by a Muslim student. Nothing happened to that student. Nothing. And she felt unsafe in school, and now she's homeschooled. In the UK, the only population where their schools have guards and fences to protect them are Jews. This insane case where the police altered an intelligence report, invented one, in order to prevent, Jews from coming and celebrating sport, soccer. I mean, think about how in the past, there was a lot of violence within the soccer in England,
Yes.
and how the police had to deal with it. And now they're altering it, caving in to Islamists who are persecuting Jews, and they're forbidding Jews in participating in sports events. I mean, that's insane. It's mind-blowing. And Jews are unsafe in the UK. And I said as well to the Jews in the UK, leave your home, come to Israel. You will be safe here. And this is the same message that Trump is sending now to Jews. And I'll tell you why it's important. This is a debate that, Jews in the diaspora had,
Yes.
Before the Second World War. Should the Jews stay and fight, or should they go to their homeland, Israel, to create their own state where they can defend themselves and go back to their homeland and liberate it? And this is a question that we need to face now. Our generation, Ariel, can you imagine that? And I tell them, you know what? Only when the Jews will leave the UK or France or Belgium, that's when the persecution will start against the Christians, against the English. And then they'll understand it's not about the Jews. It's about a war, a third world war. We are fighting right now against radical Islamists who are fighting our values, the things that we cherish the most, that we fought so much for. Freedom, liberation, the ability to choose what you will wear, what you will say, what you will believe in, to practice your own faith. That's what they're fighting against. And only then they will wake up to understand before more blood will be spilled, because the first blood that's going to be spilled is Jewish blood. And they shouldn't be at the front line. I don't want my family to pay the price of what those authorities and those government are incapable or don't want to do, because they are afraid, because they are weak. Mm-hmm. Come to Israel, be safe, okay, be protected, and let them deal with the in-depth problem that they are going to face before more blood will be spilled.
Yeah. And Sharren, is there official people that are talking from the Israeli government to the British government and telling them please take care of this problem? There's literally Jews that are unsafe, and you're talking about Palestinian statehood and all this kind of stuff, which is nothing, and just talking to your base of voters that you're scared will run away to all these independent Gaza MPs. There's 5 of them in the UK. People who literally ran in elections to represent a district, and instead of talking about the garbage, instead of talking about education and economics and price of living, they spoke about Gaza. That should tell you a lot about, number one, the people who ran, but also of the voters in those areas, that they care more about, I don't know, helping Hamas than making their own lives better. And so Labor, I think, is scared of them. So, but is there official messages being back and forth on this?
Yeah.
And what do they say?
All the time.
What do they say?
And unfortunately, they are caving into the pro-Hamas narrative time after time.
So they say, when people for the Maccabi Tel Aviv thing happened.
So I went out straight away, and thank God the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, actually stood up and said this is unacceptable. But unfortunately, his authorities have fabricated an intelligence report and refuses to bring those. And so I think he starts to understand how far it actually reached, because I don't think beforehand he would actually say that. I think the Manchester terrorist attack have actually woken them up a little bit, but not enough.
Yeah.
And I think that when he has almost 200 members of parliament who their winning in the elections was based on a very small minority that is based on Muslim migrants who were educated in their home. Like I told you before, like as if anti-Semitism is something okay, demonizing Jews or Israelis or things like that is normal as part of their culture. When they rely on that and they don't care about the UK agenda, UK safety, little girls' safety, and the only thing they care is the Islamist agenda, the hatred towards Israel. They're politicians and they're guarding their seats. And I can understand that as a politician, but I completely disagree.
Yeah.
And throughout the 10 years that I've been serving in parliament, I've always paid a lot of prices in the media, in the public, in positions, in order to stand beside what I believe is right.
Yes, and I can attest to that. Also, so another place that we had literally Jews dying was in Australia, in Hanukkah, on the beach in Sydney and Bondi Beach. And so I guess two things. Number one was the reaction before the attack by the Australian government of how they treated the whole situation here, which led, I think, a lot of legitimacy to Jew hatred in their own country. And then the reaction after. So how do you, I think a lot of the stuff you spoke about the UK is probably also relevant to, in generality, towards the left-wing government in Australia. But why, there's literally like, I forgot how many people died, 13 people or something like that.
I think 15.
15 people died because they were Jewish in Australia. And there was no like, we're sorry. We shouldn't have said like, what Israel's doing is a genocide. We should have at least shown some empathy towards the Jewish victims because like 99% of the Australian Jewish community is Zionist that supports Israel. There was nothing. And now they're making this committee that seems to be really a joke. Mm-hmm. So what are the messages going between Israel and Australia on this?
Wow. So it's been very difficult. And it's been very difficult for 2 years because, I was shocked when that happened. I lived in Australia. I lived in Australia for 6 years. I lived in Bondi. I worked in Bondi. This is my community, my friends. This is a Chabad house. I used to go in Hanukkah to get the candles and the Chanukiah and everything and to buy my matzahs in Passover. And you don't understand how, if I take 10 years back, 20 years back, Australia was one of the safest places for Jews around the world. Something like that would be considered unimaginable. And that's why in the last 2 years, people were laughing that off. Oh, yeah, you're exaggerating. But for 2 years, I've been warning them. This will end with blood. And I wrote opinion pieces and I had interviews. And in all the meetings I've had with Australian officials, I warned this will end with blood. Why did I knew that? Why was it written on the wall? Because since the 8th of October, there were marches, hate marches, pro-Hamas marches, where they were chanting, gas the Jews on the steps of the Opera House. No one was arrested. This is a hate crime. This is a call for murder of Jews. No one was arrested. No one was prosecuted. No one drew a red line. No one condemned it. You know what they said? They didn't say gas the Jews.
They said get the Jews.
They only said wear the Jews or fuck the Jews. Excuse my language, okay? But that's what, so the government was giving excuses to what was happening. And so they felt, you saw a surge or a rise in a lot of the extreme voices in Australia. This is also caused by migration, a lot of the Lebanese community, a lot of people who had communication with Hezbollah, a lot of preachers who were preaching towards hatred and radicalizations of young Muslims there that were going just freely there. Mm-hmm. And when you saw that rise, and when the government did not draw a red line, you understood this is a ticking bomb. Then you saw the rhetoric of the government. So if the government rhetoric in regards to it would have drawn a red line, or it was very much buying into the pro-Hamas propaganda. We had many challenges in dialogue with the Australian governments. They were clear on their position, pro-Palestinian position. A lot of the rhetoric was buying into the Hamas's propaganda that was spread, and so that was a huge warning, because that was inflating some of the the rise
Yes.
of the confidence in those Islamists in marching down the streets, intimidating. Okay. And then you saw a huge rise in anti-Semitism, like never before.
Synagogues, Jewish schools, all
Synagogues
these other
were
things.
burnt, Jewish
Restaurants.
daycare. Yeah, Jewish businesses were targeted. Jews were violently attacked. And when you saw that, you understood that the rhetoric of the government have, somehow created, a legitimization in the events of the anti-Semitism against the Jewish community. It created legitimacy to those radical Islamists who were marching down the streets calling to kill Jews. And you understood that all those components together are a ticking bomb. And it's only a matter of time before blood will be spilled.
And then it was.
And it was. And it was.
And their reaction since then, it seems to me that, first of all, they denied and totally brushed off any criticism of them. The Prime Minister, Albanese.
His first statement didn't even talk about a terrorist
Jews.
attack, an Islamist attack, or anti-Semitism, or Jews.
Yes.
I mean, that was insane. And then he started correcting himself more and more, understanding what a huge damage and what an absurdity that is.
Why is his first thing, people like him, but him also, the first inclination is to not mention at all who was attacked, which is Jews, and who the attackers were. It seems that it's not only him, it's other people, other
it's
leaders
part
too.
of the policy.
Why?
Well, first of all, he's a pro-Palestinian activist. He's been demonstrating. He's very much on that side. That's one. The second one is, as I told you, the political alliance between the left and the Islamists, and many leaders who don't want to hurt their voter base.
But why does it hurt? This is one thing that I've never understood. Maybe you don't either.
What
Because
they're trying to do, like Jeremy Corbyn and other ones, is to build some independent representatives.
Right.
You talked about
To challenge the mainstream left.
there was a Pakistani representative who keeps on talking about just Gaza and free flights to Pakistan and crap like that. Sorry. And instead of looking after UK issues, the economy and things that are happening, he can threaten the Prime Minister. I'm going to go and become independent, or I'm going to join Jeremy Corbyn, the anti-Semitic, communist.
Yes.
Idiot. Excuse my language. I'm going to join him. And when you have independence, that creates a huge problem, because then they don't have to align with the party's agenda and decisions, and then they can stop budgets or different legislations.
No, I understand the political calculation. What I don't understand is why, for example, if you're a Muslim in Australia, why it should offend you that a radical Muslim killed Jews, to say that it's a radical Muslim that killed Jews. So if it was a radical Jew, not that there are, I've never heard of, at least in
that's what's interesting, because
I wouldn't care if he said it.
The problem is, it's not about offending Muslim community or trying to fight radicalism. It's about offending the Islamists, and this is a growing community. The Muslim Brotherhood, their plan for Sharia in America was exposed by the FBI when they seized a lot of documents from a home in Washington of one of their activists. And it says there, and he outlined their strategic plan to push Sharia in America. And he speaks that one of the channels is through Muslim communities and radicalizing them. He talks about universities, how that's a fertile ground to push radical ideas and to build up activists. And they're talking about civil society organizations and pushing
everything
those ideas
we see,
through them.
Basically.
It's a strategy. It's not just something random. That is their strategy. And it worked for them in the past, and it's working for them now in Western democracies. So when we understand that, you understand that some of those Muslim community have been radicalized by those radical imams. And so anything that they say about it will offend them. But when you see different communities who are fighting radical Islamists, when you see, for example, the Muslim Brotherhoods that are banned in countries in the Middle East because they understand this is the greatest danger for stability and for peace, when you see the UAE now stopping visas from students, Emirati students going to the UK so that the universities in the UK don't radicalize them.
Yes.
You understand where we at.
So one thing also is that you have, I guess, two types of countries that we don't get along with. So on that kind of thing. So you have the UK, Australia, countries that we have a dialogue with, but that we disagree with, let's put it mildly. But then you have the really crazy people, like the Spanish prime minister, who literally said in a press conference that he would like to nuke us.
This is, look.
He said, if I had nuclear weapons, I would.
He's an anti-Semitic communist. And you just need to see, the Jews are only a symptom for a much bigger disease that is happening in that country. Okay? And you saw that throughout history. Everywhere you saw anti-Semitism, it was an indication for a much bigger disease that had happened in that country. And if you look now on the extremism towards Israel, you need to look for a left-wing government, and the more extreme it is, the more anti-Israel it is as well. Because this bond, this friendship, the brotherhood between Islamist and between communist or socialist is something that is growing. And actually, it's not something that, the radical Islamists invented.
Yes.
This is systems that the KGB have invented in pushing communism throughout the world, how they ride those waves, and the KGB,
and
many
it's the same rhetoric, by the way, from the Soviets, a lot of it.
Exactly the same. Yeah. Exactly the same. And this should be a red flag for those countries. And because in those countries, look, the more left government it is, the more radical it is towards Israel. And the more leaning towards the right, the more it will be, I won't say
fair.
Pro, but fair or more supportive or have an open dialogue with Israel.
So does that mean that you're the deputy foreign minister? The foreign ministry of Israel for years had this sort of fear of talking too much to the right-wing parties in Europe because of their history and some of this, more radical factions. Is that something that Israel is revisiting and saying, we need to be more open to dialogue with those who support us, even though in the past, maybe their part, I'm just thinking of Le Pen's party in France.
Okay, so absolutely. Because politics are changing in the countries, and because Israel is in many cases at the center of the discourse, we have to change it. It doesn't mean we will go with Nazi party. Never. Okay? Those are dangerous party, and that's why we will not have communication with the AfD in Germany, because they still have Nazi representation. Okay? So we have what you would call 5 criteria where we check whether the right-wing party has any Nazi, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel notions. And by that, we will make decision whether we should form relationship or not. So with the party of Marine Le Pen, yes, it's been combating anti-Semitism. Okay, it hasn't been pro-Israeli, but if it wants to create a dialogue, we should be open for it. The Swedish Democrat Party, okay, pro-Israel.
Or Vox in
Vox
Spain.
in Spain, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to create communication. We cannot boycott a party that is vocally, openly supporting our country in our defense. It's insanity. Okay, and we cannot accept that. So that's why I'm saying everything right now is shifting and changing. And in 3 years, it's going to be much more visible, but the world order is changing. And
Yes.
countries who are right now sitting on the fence, they will have to make a decision what side they're going to be in history. And I hope it's not going to be too late.
Yes, which is why I want to also mention some good signs. So there are a number of countries, for example, in Europe that are very good friends of ours. And I think we should talk about them just for a minute. The Czech Republic, who I'm very friendly here with their ambassador. She's a very nice woman.
Yeah, Veronica is absolutely wonderful.
They're very good friends. They love Israel. The Hungarians. Which other countries do you think we're really close to? I think we now have a new impact with. It's not new, but
many.
Greece and Cyprus are working with us.
I think that in many cases we'd like to see the bad things. Here in Israel, we prepare ourselves for the worst, and so a lot of the time we broadcast the bad things. But look, we have a very special and meaningful and tight relationship with America.
Yes,
which is the most important one. Look on what's happening now with Ecuador, with
South America,
with many countries, Argentina and many other countries. Okay, Bolivia with renewing of relationships. What is happening with Germany, with Italy. So there's a lot of strengthening of relationship with many countries. Many African countries have been concentrating on also building bridges and renewing relationships, which is extremely important. India, which is going through a very difficult period of time as well, understanding the space that they're living in, and they're also fighting radical Islamists. Okay?
Yes, I was going to ask you about that later. About Asian countries.
This is a very important partnership because they understand the reality we live in. They've been fighting extremism inside and outside on their border as well. I think Indian people really understand the in-depth of this war that is coming against us. How radical Islamists are trying to change the way we live, to abuse a lot of what is happening. And so there's huge alliances that needs and are happening all around the world. And you know what? With important countries, even if we disagree with the government, we have built incredible relationships also with the opposition.
Yes.
Which is very important because it's a democracy. Things are changing. Governments are changing. And once they will be in power, then that will shift as well.
So what you mentioned South America, which is interesting because they used to all hate us. So even Argentina and obviously Brazil still hates us, the government at least. I know that the former president Bolsonaro's 2 sons are coming to Israel next week. So the opposition is very friendly with us.
It's very friendly. There's going to be elections. There's a very good chance there's going to be a change of governments and then things are going to change in regards to Israel as well. I say that because it can shift also backwards as well later on. But we need to understand where we're standing, and then we need to update our foreign policy as well based on the reality of what is happening around us.
Yes, but I guess in South America, what I mean is that the trend is very to the rejecting leftism. We see that in the latest elections in
Chile now.
Who was just here? They moved back to their embassy after the former government.
Bolivia and Ecuador and many other ones as well.
And Paraguay moved their embassy to Jerusalem.
But that's because the Americans understand what has spread through Latin America. And, people are like, what happened in Venezuela? How can something like that happen? I mean, wake up to what is happening for decades now.
Yes.
I mean, when Trump says that, the cartels or terrorist organizations is not just pulling a bunny out of the hat or something like that. It is.
Hezbollah.
There is full evidence. All the intelligence in every country can show you massive reports of the operations of Hezbollah in Latin America, okay? They're controlling the illegal drug and weapon trafficking routes, okay? They've been using Venezuela as a port. Only now it might have been exposed because of what had happened with Maduro, but he was a puppet of Iran, of Russia and China as well. But he was a major security threat to America. The fact that Hezbollah was taking over so much, think about it, before the 7th of October, 30% of the budget for Hezbollah, for their world operation, is from Latin America.
But from
Okay.
drugs in Latin America, drugs
Yeah,
and
drugs
weapons.
and illegal weapon, and then they were starting to take over resources and minerals and roots. I mean, everything that he's doing there, he has his own special way on how to do things, but he's spot on and he's firm about it. And it's about the security of America and of American people. They have killed Americans through drugs, through gangs that have been passing illegally and freely into the countries, gaining up political influence. I mean, it's insane how far it's gone.
Yes.
And they've been taking over criminal organizations. This is a pattern that they've been using all around the world. So finally, there's a strong leader who's not afraid, not just to talk, but to act. And this is a time where the leader of the free world, of one of the greatest, countries in the world, who is a symbol of defending freedom, is finally acting and setting a real red line to tyrants and dictatorship and murderous regimes, that there is a red line and it cannot be crossed.
So let's now talk about the Far East. So one of the things that to me is interesting is that a lot of the Europeans have this left-wing trend, not just Europe, even the US and Canada. There's a sort of left-wing that now equates leftism with hating Israel and Jews, by the way, which usually goes together. But in the Asian countries, India being the largest one, I think, of this type, anti-Semitism is really not a factor. So like we spoke with a bunch, my show is very popular in India because I've had on a lot of guests from India who are very popular in the country, people from the Prime Minister Modi's party, but also commentators. And the thing is, they instinctively, I think, understand that we have the same enemy and we're very similar.
Yeah, of course.
And so,
they're facing the same deadly attack, the same threats.
Yes.
Nuclear threats as well. I mean, they are in threat in the same way that Israel is.
Can you talk about the relationship between the countries?
So there's two things there. The one is the understanding of what the world is facing and how we have to defend our people, our country, and liberty itself. And the second thing is that there's a lot of similarities between the Indian culture and the Israeli culture. It's very warm.
Yes.
It's very up in your face. It's very, very friendly. It's very communal. Okay. And the fact is, Israelis love India.
And
I
very
love India.
meritocratic,
I've
by the way.
traveled. Sorry.
Very meritocratic, meaning they're very into, at least the Indian diaspora, which I know, I was never in India itself, very educational, very important for them.
Yeah,
Educating,
very smart people. I mean,
overachievers.
Hardworking. So there's so much similarity. So even on a cultural level, we just connect.
Yeah.
I mean, I love India. I traveled through India. I love the Indian food. I mean, really, this is what Israeli feels like towards India, and that's just a cultural thing. Now, for me and my girlfriends, we've been celebrating our 40th birthday 2 years ago. I haven't had the chance to go on, a little trip together with the girls just to celebrate, coming into a new decade of age. But the first thing we said, we have to go back to India, and just enjoy the culture and everything there. And so there is this a fundamental bond between the two countries and the two cultures and the people.
And the two governments too.
And the two governments as well. There's a very special friendship also between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Prime Minister of India. And I think based on that, we have mutual interests. There's a lot of economical cooperation, also on security level, and it's only expanding more and more.
And Israel's looking to diversify its weapon stuff. Netanyahu's talked about it. It's not a secret. And India is one of the places where Israel's looking to
I think
work
there's
with.
a lot of collaborations that we can do together. Israel, especially after what we've experienced during the Biden administration, must be more independent.
And diverse its
Independently.
resources.
And I'll tell you what, there's the agreement between Israel and America, and we both benefited from it. And the thing is that Israel have committed not to develop too much of its military industry
Right.
here in Israel, but in America, and then America will give the money to Israel in order to purchase American weapons. Okay, and it worked, and we have a very important alliance. But the problem is when a president come and break that very basic agreement between us that have worked in both direction, America and Israel, and what created a balance of power between militaries that have very much clearly set the armies in a certain position against the enemy, and that creates deterrence.
Yeah. Okay.
So when come one president and breaks that, Israel has to come and face the facts and face reality, and start, in some cases, develop a new industry that is going to rely on some, not all, but some technology and weapons.
Sharren, so one of the things that's interesting about America, so since October 7th, we spoke about the left wing and the left wing governments and the protesters that were what a lot of people now call the Red Green Alliance, all this kind of stuff. What we did not speak about is the American right, which we're seeing now a sort of split between traditional conservative thought that basically supports Israel, obviously through American interests too, but in general is very open to supporting Israel, with this new strand of online right that's...
Okay, let's talk about it. Because I've seen what Candace Owen have put out just recently, and I have to say, anyone that doesn't think she's absolutely a cuckoo,
she's
is
crazy.
disconnected to reality. I mean, she was starting to say that, Charlie Kirk is a time traveler and he learned in an X-Men school. And I mean, so if you buy into all those major conspiracy theories, the world is flat and things like that, then okay, then you have a crowd, okay? But she's absolutely cuckoo, okay? And I think that people who would listen to someone who's completely delusional and completely disconnected from reality and base his political view on it, I don't think this is someone that we can even have a conversation. It's not connected to reality. But there is a part of the radical right. So I'm not even talking about the Nazi one,
Right.
okay? That is existing, but it's a very small minority, okay? But it does existing that we need to push out. We cannot have any conversation with, but with people who are anti-Semitic in disguise of MAGA. And the fact is that they are spreading conspiracy theories and lies about Israel, about the Jews. And I'm absolutely certain, and we need to ask, what is their interests? Is their interest America? Okay? Because if I see them going and spreading the popularity towards countries, like Qatar, with
or
the Muslim
Venezuela.
Brotherhood, and
Tucker said they're conservative.
I mean, are you serious? So he's now promoting Maduro,
Yes.
a communist regime who's abused, who literally killed Americans with drugs, with illegal weapons, with gangs coming in, bringing radical Islamist regimes and armies like Hezbollah close to his border, and he's defending them? I would ask, who's sponsoring you? Okay? Where that money comes from? And he is not pro-America, but he is pro-Islamist.
Yes.
Okay, pro-communist. And this is in a disguise of MAGA. Okay? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
And, I think more than what it is about us in Israel to reply to a lot of these conspiracy theories and things like that. the Americans needs to open their eyes to it,
I
and they
agree.
need to combat it, and they need to combat it within.
And President Trump, by the way, said there's no room for anti-Semites in the party and in the movement, and he's very clear on that. I wish that other people would also be very clear on that. So, but one of the things that also they keep on bringing up the money that America gives to Israel. The Prime Minister here has said that he wants to wean off the money. Should you approve, as a politician now? Do you are you supportive?
He cannot use that as an excuse.
Obviously.
Because America have benefited from that agreement as well. Okay? This had together in cooperation. Israel stopped a lot of the industry, the military industry. It was developing. Okay?
Here, locally.
And so they were able not just to stop Israel's technology, which is brilliant, in developing it and overshadowing their own industry in some cases in weapons or technology. Yes. Okay, so to keep American businesses and American military companies alive, and this is jobs, this is taxes, this is everything. Okay, but they had also a veto on what we do have here in selling to other countries. And to protect American interest in that. And this is something that, to be honest, is worth much more money than what Israel have received. And, we're not going to break this alliance. It's going to stay, but we are going to reduce it to make sure we continue that balance that will benefit both.
But
and there's some voices in Israel who are saying, okay, we have to stop it completely and then completely develop it. And we'll decide who we're selling it to. And there are some voices who are saying that. But I think that the relationship, and what it creates, the bonds, the security bonds together, are more important than that. And I think we can still rely on that. But we need to make sure that the things that are critical for defense, there won't be a chance again that they can be stopped or, that Israel can be under an existential threat because one president chooses not to fulfill an agreement that for years and years and generations have been going on.
So I grew up in New York City. I literally saw the World Trade Center on fire on 9/11 from the window of our school. And now 25 years later, almost exactly, we had on November, so a little over, like 2 months over 25 years and 2 months, we have now a mayor that is not only is he a communist, he calls himself a democratic socialist, but they're not democratic socialists like Denmark or Norway. They're literally socialists. Yeah. But he also is, I think it's safe to say, either he himself is an Islamist or it just happens to be that all his friends are Islamists, and he's
not just happen to be. Okay?
Yeah, no, I'm joking. I'm saying, like, even if he would be able to deny it, everyone around him is. So he's friends with Linda Sarsour and Hassan Piker and all these crazy imams and people.
Radical Islamists who are pushing those radical ideas into America.
And I would just also add that 9/11 is something that came up in the campaign. And he said his reaction was that on 9/11, his aunt, which it turned out he wasn't really his aunt, so even that's not true, was worried of going on the train and because she was Muslim with her hijab, which, by the way, yesterday, Professor Judea Pearl, who's the father of Daniel Pearl, who was killed by an Islamist in Pakistan, told me and reminded me that in New York, after 9/11, all of the liberal Jewish synagogues formed a committee that reached out to the Muslim community and mosques and tried to work with them to make sure they didn't feel threatened. So in a way, it just shows how like the left changed in 25 years. It's and he wants to arrest our prime minister also, which he can't, but he says he wants to. So how do you... What is Israel's position on all this? I mean, I understand what the position would be, but what do you think?
You understand? I mean, the prime minister has spoken about it, and it's very.
I think he should go. and just see if he gets arrested.
He will be.
He needs to go to the UN at some
He
point.
will
no?
be. He will be, and it's an absolute joke. But it's very sad that this is the discourse or the conversation in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And it becomes so extreme and so marginal and so radical in that, and it's very unfortunate. And I think more and more of them understand that this is why they've lost the elections, and this is why voters are running away from them. But specifically about Mandani, 30% of the Jewish community voted for him. Okay?
I think it's less, but let's say maybe 20
and
something.
It does show what a huge challenge Israel have with the Jewish community in New York. And in other countries, I think Chicago or and other ones, cities, specific cities who are very democratic cities, there's a huge challenge because there's a very big narrative of extreme, radical, woke, progressive, that is not about what's right. It's about making compensations for something you didn't do because of your identity. And
Sort
to
of
be
like
ashamed
white
of your
guilt and Jewish guilt and all this kind of thing.
Well, it means and so you have to be ashamed of yourself, of who you are, of your history, of your identity, because what had happened generations ago to my people by your people. Not even talking about what those
really
other
happened.
people did or what had happened, but this is based on racial, not even racial, but the sort of the color of your skin.
Which is weird because most Jews in Israel aren't white.
I know. I'm an Arab Jew.
My
mom's Moroccan.
My wife's Iraqi and Persian.
So, but it's like a narrative that the extreme progressive have been pushing, and this is part of the indoctrination of the Islamists for them to reshape and indoctrinate into a new identity that can somehow accept Islamism. Okay, radical Islam, and it works for them, and it's quite dangerous. It's very dangerous, and I'll tell you why. I was in the army.
Yes,
you were in the army, and I was a combat soldier for 3 years.
In the border police.
Yeah, during the times of the Second Intifada. That's dangerous. This is an 18-year-old girl who doesn't go to school, who doesn't go to university, leaves everything. Know that, there might be a 50% chance I will be killed, okay? I will finish my life defending my country and my people. What dangerous situation I was and can be in. Going through the most extreme and intensive physical training, mental training, everything. Why would someone do that? Why? When you see in different countries, even in Ukraine, Russia, Syria, Sudan, when a war starts, there are millions of people who are fleeing for their lives.
Yeah.
But in Israel, I think it's the only place where you saw on the 7th of October and the 8th of October a massive amount of people coming from overseas into Israel to fight, to defend our country, to defend our people. And you ask yourself, how come Israel is so different? Why is it capable of, eliminating and destroying Hezbollah's capability, and in 12 days destroying Iran's capability, and this and that? And there's one answer. It's the people and their motivation. And this is because we love our country. We love our people. We know our history. We love our history. We love our tradition. We love our faith. We love our everything about it. And we will do everything in our capability to protect it because we understand what the cost of freedom is. And we'll risk our life at the age of 18 and live everything for 3 years to make sure that our country, our faith, our identity, our traditions are guarded and protected. It is out of love and proud of who we are. And what this indoctrination is doing in Europe and in America and in Canada and in Australia is to teach the younger generation to hate their culture and to hate their history and to hate their faith and to hate their identity and to hate who they are and to hate their flag.
Right.
So you tell me, in 2 generations from now, in 3 generations from now, if the UK, God forbid, is at war against Iran or Russia or Pakistan or whatever, who's going to defend their border? Who's going to risk their life to preserve the culture and the identity and the history and the flag and their traditions? Who's going to have that love and that pride to defend their people and their country? And so part of their strategy is to indoctrinate in order to create not just this stability, but to crumble down the foundation that society live on.
Yeah. And by the way, this is all on the backdrop of the protests in Iran, where you literally have people risking their lives for all this freedom, while at the same time we've had for 2.5 years people not risking their life, the opposite, being spoiled little babies going in the streets supporting the people who
terrorist organization they're
were
supporting
supported
Hamas.
by the Iranians that are now killing their people in the streets. So yeah, it's very, very weird. And I think also you're right, if a lot of these Western countries would have no one to protect them, a lot of these countries' armies are tiny at this point because no one wants to go fight. They're very spoiled. They hate their own culture. When you hate your own culture, you don't fight to save it and protect it. So yeah, I agree.
And you just need to look on the sides of what's happening in Iran. Within a week, there's almost 20,000 people who were butchered and massacred and executed.
And no
by
one's
this
in the streets.
Violent
in the
regime,
UK.
and they are fighting for their freedom.
Yeah.
Those women, those young children are fighting to liberate themselves. What does it mean? So that they can make a choice of what to wear, of what to say, to sing. They are fighting so that a girl can go out in the street and sing a Beyonce song. This is forbidden. And they are being murdered and butchered and raped in the most horrendous way to fight for something that many of those useful idiots that are marching in the streets in London or New York were given on a silver platter. Don't know what the cost of that. It's insanity. It's mind-blowing.
And those same people are not in the streets for the Iranians. That's my point.
Oh, no.
They don't care about it. The
Because they
universities are
don't care
empty.
about human rights.
Yes,
They don't care about people. They don't care about freedom. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about women. They care about fashion. They care about the propaganda on what's cool.
And a lot of them hate Jews. Let's put it on the table.
Yeah.
So I agree with everything pretty much you just said, which is pretty depressing because internally, and this is the last question for you because we're getting to be out of time, but we, up until October 7th, we had here on the streets these giant protests in Israel. A lot of my American Jewish friends that are my regular viewers and listeners were very concerned. What is happening in Israel? Why is the country on fire? Go try to explain to people all the intricacies of what was being done, judicial reform and all these other things. I don't want to get into that, but I do want to know we're coming to an election year in Israel. We're going to see, again, people in America are going to be watching from afar and seeing the fighting internally start again. Do you really believe, because I don't want to get into the politics of it, that really what you said is true? Meaning we're going to see people hate each other here and now. We already have protests every other day here and right now. Do people still like each other in Israel, even though they hate each other? It's a weird question, but it's true.
Wow. So I just came here from something that I've been trying to build, and it's sort of like a dialogue, something similar to what Charlie Kirk used to do. And I opened like a little table
Tent.
with chairs just nearby here in Ramat Gan, and I started just having conversations with people. And I think that there's more people who are tired of fighting internally than those loud voices who have a huge megaphone who spread hatred and division. And that gave me a lot of hope as well. And I am trying to build those bridges because I know that if we stand together, this is our greatest weapon. And if we are divided and we fight among each other, this is our greatest weakness. And many people don't understand Israeli politics because, in Israel, we really want to see ourselves as Europeans and with European politics and ideology and things like that. But it's not. Okay, it's a very tribal politics. It's very similar to what's happening in the Middle East. You base your politics on your tribe. And it's like, in Lebanon, you have the Shiite party and the Druze party and the Sunni party like this, and in Iraq and everything. And this is what happens here in Israel. So you have the Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox party, and you have the Sephardic ultra-Orthodox
and the Arab parties,
and the Arab Communist Party, and the Arab religious party, and you have the Zionist religious, and you have the socialist secular, and you have the light religious. And so depending on the tribe you come from, this is how you are going to vote. And the quicker we understand it, we can build bridges quicker. I'm very ideological, so I have a very clear right-wing ideological perspective from a military point of view and from an economical point of view, and it's very clear. So I'm a very rare creature in Israeli politics. And it's been very, very difficult. But I think that's why I find myself in a very unique position and an attempt now on trying to create reconciliation and trying to build a bridge. Politics have shifted and turned, and my party went back into the Likud, which is where I originated from. And I told them I'm not coming back. And I'm not coming back because I want to find my place where I can represent my tribe. A tribe that wants to build a bridge, a very right-wing Zionistic tribe who is carrying a huge load of military service, of economical service for that country. We do it with all the love we can do, but we need someone in the parliament to look after us, to look after our back. And we don't have right now a representation. And I'm taking now the time to try and find my position in politics where I can serve my tribe. And this is a decision I've made. And it's a very difficult political decision. But this is what I will do.
Yes. And you made the decision in advance of the elections that will happen at some time this year. I just want to say to our audience that I want to maybe do a weekly show here about Israeli politics in English, just because a lot of people in America, not America, the English-speaking world that love Israel don't really know what's happening. And when they do hear what's happening, they get a very one-sided view, and that view is very depressing a lot of times. Well, it's depressing either way, but they should get the other view, the other depressing view that I have to give. So anyway, Sharren, Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel, it was a true pleasure to speak with you. We agreed with almost everything you said, which is pretty cool because it doesn't usually happen.
Thank you.
Just because we spoke about things that were almost in consensus in Israel. So when people hear like the government says this and that, I think almost all of Israelis in the mainstream would agree on 99% of what we spoke about today. So which is why the whole point where people say, no, we're not against Israel, we're against the government. That's ridiculous. It depends on what, but mostly it's ridiculous on foreign policy. At this point, like 80% of Jews in Israel are against two-state solution, giving concessions to the Palestinians, and different stuff like that, where you maybe in the past you can say there was a difference between the government and some of the people. Right now it's not. So guys, everything we spoke about here is pretty much in the mainstream of Israel. And Sharren gave a good defense of what Israel's position is, whether, by the way, it would be Netanyahu or someone else on the foreign policy front. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
It was a true pleasure and honor.
It was a great pleasure.
And Batzlacha, good luck on your political future.
Thank you very much.